I never meant to listen. The walls are thin in this building, old and tired like me. They creak and sigh and whisper secrets that aren't mine to hear. But when the night settles and the streetlights hum outside my window, her voice slips through the plaster like smoke. Angry, desperate, sometimes pleading. First, I thought she was fighting with her husband, or maybe a boyfriend. The arguments always started around midnight, the kind of time when people are supposed to be sleeping, not tearing each other apart. Her name's Clara. Moved in about 6 months ago, just across the hall. Pretty girl, early 30s maybe. Always polite. Always with a shy smile when she saw me collecting my mail. "Good evening, Mrs. Turner," she'd say, voice soft like she was afraid to be heard. I liked her right away. But at night, she was someone else. The first night I heard it, I sat up in bed thinking someone had broken in. There was a crash, a scream, muffled words I couldn't quite catch. I froze listening. Then came her voice, sharp and trembling. "Stop it. Just stop it already." A man's voice answered, low and slurred. Or at least I thought it was a man. I called the building manager the next morning, asked if he knew who lived with her. He said she lived alone. No visitors listed, no spare key issued. I didn't believe him, because the next night I heard it again. This time I got up and went to the door, pressed my ear against the wood. There were two voices, hers and his. She cried, he yelled. Or maybe the other way around. I couldn't tell anymore. When it stopped, I went back to bed, heart pounding. The silence afterward felt heavier than the noise. By the third night, curiosity got the better of me. I cracked my door open and peered into the hallway. Her apartment light was on, flickering under the gap. Shadows moved beneath the door, quick, restless. I could hear her pacing, something clattering to the floor, then a soft sob. I should have minded my business. But loneliness does strange things to people. And I've been lonely a long time. My husband's been gone 9 years now. The house is too quiet. Maybe that's why I started to listen. One night, I even sat in my chair by the window with a cup of tea, lights off, waiting. The argument began right on time, 12:04. Like clockwork. Her voice rose and cracked, raw with fury. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. You're not real, you're not even." Then a crash. Glass breaking. I jumped. The tea burned my hand. I leaned out the window, looking at hers across the courtyard. Curtains drawn tight, but I could see her silhouette. A thin figure moving in jerks, like someone being pulled by invisible strings. Then silence. The next morning I saw her outside. She was watering her plants. Smiling. Calm. She even waved. I waved back, pretending my heart wasn't still pounding from the night before. Days went by and I started keeping track, notes on a little pad by my bed. When the yelling started, when it stopped, if there were any patterns. I noticed the arguments always began the same way. A door slamming, heavy footsteps, her voice rising. But no one ever entered or left. I checked. I watched. The hallway camera near the elevator, it never showed anyone going in. Only her. Then came Thursday, the day everything started to change. That morning, she left for work, wearing a blue dress. I watched her go down the stairs and out the building, her hair tied neatly. 10 minutes later, I heard her voice again. Inside her apartment. At first, I thought she'd forgotten something. But then she laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind that sends chills crawling down your neck. I went to the door. She was talking, arguing again. But this time, I only heard her. One voice. One person. Her tone shifted from angry to apologetic, then soft, like she was comforting someone. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to say that. Please don't go. I held my breath. Then came a sound, gentle, rhythmic tapping, like someone knocking their fingers on wood, but slower. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that laugh, that strange conversation. Maybe she worked from home? Maybe she was rehearsing something? But no. I'd seen her leave. By the next week, I couldn't pretend it didn't bother me. I started hearing things even during the day. Faint whispers through the vent, her humming a tune I didn't recognize. Always the same melody. Low sad. Once I knocked on her door. She didn't answer. But I could hear movement, the soft scuff of feet, the sound of someone breathing close to the door. Then nothing. I left a note under her mat. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." The note was gone the next morning. But that night she didn't argue. She sang. The same haunting melody, again and again, until it faded into silence. I thought maybe she was getting better, but then I saw it. 2 days later, I was walking past her apartment when the door opened suddenly. She jumped, startled to see me there. Her eyes red, swollen, her hands trembling. I smiled, trying to look casual. "Rough night," I joked. She stared at me a long time before answering. "Do you ever hear things you're not supposed to?" The question made my stomach twist. I said no, of course not. She smiled faintly. "Lucky you," she said, and closed the door. That night, the arguing returned, worse than before. Furniture scraped the floor, glass shattered, and her voice. Oh, that voice. She sounded terrified. "Get out. You're not real. You're not real." Then a loud thud. Silence. I almost called the police. Almost. But something stopped me. Maybe fear. Maybe guilt. What if I was wrong? What if she really wasn't alone? I waited by the peephole, staring into the dim hallway, heart racing. No one came out. No one went in. Just the flicker of the old light bulb above her door, buzzing faintly like an insect. The next morning I saw her again. Calm. Smiling. Carrying a trash bag down the stairs. She looked lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. But I noticed something strange, a dark red smear near her wrist. She noticed me looking and tucked her sleeve down. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile. She threw the bag into the bin outside, turned and gave me this look, half sorrow, half relief. "It's quieter now," she said softly. "He's gone." And she walked away. That night, for the first time in weeks, I heard nothing. Not a sound. I thought it was over. But just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a voice. Faint, distant, coming from her apartment. Not angry. Not scared. Just whispering. A man's voice. And Clara's reply, soft and trembling. "I told you not to come back." I sat up in bed, my throat dry, my heart pounding. I wanted to knock on her door, to ask if she was okay. But I couldn't move, because deep down I wasn't sure what I'd find if I did. The next morning, I told myself it had been a dream. I made coffee, fed the cat, opened the blinds. Ordinary things. Safe things. But the silence from Clara's apartment wasn't ordinary. It was too still. Too deliberate. I pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. No movement, no murmuring. For the first time in weeks, her world seemed to have gone quiet. I should have been relieved. But relief has a strange weight when it comes after fear. It feels hollow, like the calm before a storm. Around noon I saw her leave. Same blue dress as before, hair brushed, a little smile on her lips. She looked normal. But when she passed by, I caught a faint smell, something sharp and metallic. I told myself it was cleaning product. It had to be. After she left, I did something I shouldn't have. I opened her mail slot, just to look. Just for a second. But I saw something odd. An envelope wedged deep inside, edges torn, addressed in a child's handwriting. To Mommy. My stomach tightened. She didn't have a child. At least not that I'd ever seen. I tried to slide it out, but it was stuck. I almost ripped it before I heard footsteps on the stairs. I jumped back, heart in my throat. It was only the delivery boy, but I shut my door fast anyway. That night I didn't hear arguing. But I heard something else. Whispering. Low, rhythmic, like a lullaby half remembered. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone, the tenderness, it chilled me. I turned off the lights and sat by the window again. Her curtains were drawn, but I could see flickers of movement, soft, swaying. Then I saw her silhouette, sitting on the edge of her bed, her head bowed, and next to her, smaller. A second shadow. A child's. I blinked. No, it couldn't be. My eyes had to be playing tricks. I leaned closer to the glass, breath fogging the window. The smaller shadow tilted its head, then disappeared. The next morning I waited by the mailboxes, hoping to see her. She came down carrying a basket of laundry. I tried to act casual. "Sleep better last night?" I asked. She paused, looked at me for a long time. Her eyes were red again. "He doesn't like it when I sleep too long," she said softly. I frowned. "He?" She smiled faintly, as if realizing she'd said too much. "I mean work. My boss." Then she hurried away. That night, the arguments returned, but softer, sadder. I could hear every word now. The walls seemed thinner than ever. "Please," she begged. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you alone." Silence. Then her voice cracked into a sob. "I still hear you. Every night. I can't stop." I sat there frozen, clutching the edge of my blanket. The air felt thick, pressing on my chest. Who was she talking to? I thought about calling someone, her family, the police, anyone. But who would believe an old woman spying on her neighbor through the walls? Instead, I decided to talk to her, face to face. The next day, I knocked on her door. It took a while before she opened. She looked tired. Not just tired, hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Clara, dear," I said gently, "are you all right?" She blinked, eyes unfocused. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? I hear things," I said carefully. "At night. It sounds like someone's hurting you." Her expression changed. A flicker of fear. Or anger. Maybe both. "You shouldn't listen," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's rude to listen when the dead are speaking." Before I could say another word, she closed the door. I stood there in the hall, the words echoing in my head. When the dead are speaking. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat by the window again, watching her apartment across the courtyard. Around midnight, her light flicked on. She stood by the window too, staring out into the dark. For a moment our eyes met through the glass. I swear she smiled. Then she lifted her hand like she was waving to someone, but not to me. To something behind her. The next morning there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a small cardboard box on the mat. No name, no return address. Just my apartment number scrawled on the top. Inside was a toy car. Old dusty, one of those metal ones kids used to play with decades ago. And a note. "Keep it safe for me. He likes to wander." My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped it. I looked across the hall, but her door was closed. For 2 nights after that, silence. Then the third night, the arguing started again. Only this time she wasn't angry. She sounded terrified. "Stop. Please stop it. I told you I didn't mean to." A loud crash. Then something dragging. I pressed my ear against the wall, heart hammering. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't make me remember. Please don't make me remember." Then a sound I'll never forget. The faint, gentle giggle of a child. I stumbled back from the wall, covering my mouth. No, it couldn't be. There were no children in that apartment. No visitors. No family. But it was there, light and eerie, echoing faintly through the vent. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the toy car on my table, staring at it like it might move on its own. Every little noise in the building made me jump. The next morning, I saw her at the mailboxes again. She looked worse, pale, eyes sunken, hands trembling. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. She noticed me staring and smiled weakly. "He's been better lately," she said. "We had a good night." I forced a nod, even though my stomach turned. Later that day, I decided to talk to the building manager. I told him about the noise, the arguments, the crying. He sighed like he'd heard it all before. "She's had issues," he said finally. "Lived here years ago. Moved out after." He stopped himself. "Never mind. She came back a few months ago. I guess she wanted to start over." "After what?" I pressed. He looked uneasy. "She lost her son. About 4 years back. Accident. Fell from their balcony." My blood ran cold. "Their balcony?" He nodded. "That same apartment." I went home in silence. That night I didn't listen. I couldn't. I turned up the TV, shut all the windows, anything to drown it out. But around midnight, even through the noise, I heard her voice again. Soft this time. Gentle. Like a mother tucking someone into bed. "Sleep now, sweetheart. Mommy's here." I turned off the TV. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then a single knock on my wall. Slow. Deliberate. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. I stared at the plaster like it might breathe. Then faintly her whisper. "Did he visit you too?" My throat went dry. I couldn't answer. Couldn't move. The next morning I found another note slipped under my door. "You shouldn't ignore him. He gets lonely." I didn't leave my apartment all day. By evening I noticed the toy car was gone. I tore the place apart looking for it, but it wasn't anywhere. And when I looked out my window across the courtyard, I saw it. sitting on her windowsill. She was standing behind it, staring straight at me, and smiling. After that morning, I decided to keep my distance. I'd seen enough strange things in my life to know when to stay out of someone else's storm. But Clara wasn't a storm. She was the quiet that comes before one. That fragile calm where you can almost believe things are fine, right before everything falls apart. Days passed without a sound. No arguments. No crying. No whispers through the wall. The silence felt heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. Then one afternoon there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Clara was standing there. Hair messy, eyes puffy, a smile that didn't reach her face. She held out the little toy car. "I think this belongs to you," she said softly. I froze. "You left it at my door," I replied. She blinked. "Did I?" She looked at it for a long time, turning it in her hand like it was something sacred. "He loved this one," she whispered. "Used to drive it along the window ledge every morning before school." My stomach turned. "Your son?" Her lips trembled. "Eli. He was 7. She didn't cry. Not then. Her eyes just emptied, like she was somewhere else entirely. I wanted to say something comforting, but what words can touch a wound like that? She slipped the toy into my hand and forced a smile. "You keep it. I don't want to lose it again." Then she turned and walked back to her apartment. That night I couldn't stop thinking about her. About the look in her eyes, the way she said, "again." Like the loss wasn't something that happened once, but every single day she woke up. I didn't hear any arguing that night, but I couldn't sleep either. By the next evening I noticed something new. Her lights stayed off, even after sunset. I waited, watching the dark outline of her window. Nothing. On the third night I started to worry. I hadn't seen her go out, hadn't heard a single sound. Finally, I walked across the hall and knocked. "Clara." No answer. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. But I could hear faint movement, like someone shifting on the floor. "Clara, it's Mrs. Turner. Are you all right?" Then I heard it. A whisper. Not words, just breath. Then a thud. I hesitated only a moment before trying the handle. Locked. I considered calling the police, but something made me pause. Maybe pride, maybe fear of being wrong. Instead, I slid a note under her door. "I'm here if you need help." I stayed awake until dawn. Around 6, I heard her door open. Footsteps. The rustle of plastic. When I peeked through the peephole, I saw her leaving a trash bag by the stairwell. She looked exhausted, hair unwashed, hands shaking. But what caught my attention was the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, as if someone was following her. She noticed me watching. Our eyes met through the small circle of glass. For a moment she looked terrified. Then she smiled again, that same hollow smile, and walked away. Later that day, curiosity got the better of me. I went to the trash bin she'd used and peeked inside. Nothing unusual, just crumpled papers, an empty bottle, a broken picture frame. But when I lifted the frame, I saw the photograph inside. Clara, a man, and a small boy with sandy hair. Eli. The glass was shattered right across his face. That night I heard her again. But it wasn't anger this time. It was pleading. "I didn't mean to shout, baby. I just need you to answer me. Please, Eli, talk to me." My heart sank. There was no other voice. No child. Just hers, desperate and trembling. I realized then that she wasn't arguing with anyone. She was arguing with memory. I should have stopped listening. But every night I found myself waiting, hoping maybe she'd stop, maybe she'd sleep. But she didn't. The conversations went on for hours. Sometimes she scolded him for leaving his toys on the floor. Sometimes she told him bedtime stories. Sometimes she screamed. Once she said something I'll never forget. "It was an accident." I swear it was. The words made my blood run cold. The next morning, I saw her at the mailbox again. She was holding a letter, trembling so much she dropped it. I bent down to help, but she snatched it up too quickly, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "I can't keep pretending," she murmured. "He's still here." Her voice cracked on the last word. I wanted to reach out to hold her hand, but she stepped back. "They told me not to talk about it," she said, her voice barely audible. "But he hates when I don't." "Who told you that?" I asked gently. She didn't answer. Jess smiled again, that same fragile, broken smile, and walked away. That evening, I saw her standing in the courtyard, talking to the air. Her lips moved fast, hands gesturing like she was arguing with someone right in front of her. People passed by without looking, pretending not to see. But I saw. I watched as she picked up a small toy from the ground, the same car she'd given me, and held it close to her chest. Then she whispered, "It's time to come home." The next morning, the building manager knocked on my door. He looked worried. "Have you seen Clara?" he asked. I told him I hadn't, not since last night. He frowned. "Her job called. She hasn't been in for 3 days." That afternoon, I saw her curtains still closed, her lights still off. The silence pressed in around me like a weight. I couldn't stand it anymore. I went to her door and knocked again. Nothing. I called her name until my voice shook. Still nothing. Finally, I heard a faint sound, not from inside but from the stairwell below. A muffled cry. I followed it down, my old knees protesting every step. The door to the basement was open. Inside, the light flickered weakly. She was there, sitting on the cold floor, holding the picture frame, the same one I'd seen in the trash. Her eyes were distant, her lips moving. "He's cold," she whispered. "I can't find his blanket." My heart broke. I knelt beside her slowly, careful not to startle her. "Clara, honey," I said softly. "He's gone. You know that, don't you?" She didn't look at me. "They keep saying that," she murmured. "But he's not. He talks to me every night." Tears welled in my eyes. "No, sweetheart. That's just you remembering him. That's love trying not to disappear." She turned to me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I saw her fighting it, the truth pushing against the delusion. Then she whispered, "If I stop talking, he'll be gone for good." I didn't know what to say. I just reached out and took her hand. "Then maybe it's time to let him rest." She stared at me for a long time. Then the tears came, deep, shaking sobs that sounded like they'd been trapped inside her for years. I called for help after that. The ambulance came quietly, no sirens, just soft voices and white gloves. They led her away gently. As she passed me, she said one last thing. "He liked the blue car best. Keep it safe for him." And then she was gone. That night, her apartment was silent again. For the first time in months, I slept. But when I woke up, the toy car was sitting on my windowsill. I must have put it there myself, though I don't remember doing it. I looked at it for a long time. It was just a piece of metal, just a toy, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Maybe because part of me understood what she meant, about not wanting to let go. And sometimes late at night, when the wind moves through the vents just right, I still think I hear her voice. Not arguing, not crying, just talking softly, as if to someone she loved too much to lose. I never listen for long anymore. But sometimes I wonder, what would you have done in my place? Would you have helped her sooner? Or would you have waited like I did until it was almost too late? The building has never felt so quiet. For weeks, every night had been filled with voices. Hers, mine, the echoes of what I thought was life still being lived behind those walls. Now it's just silence, thick and final. The day they took her away, they locked her apartment door with a new key. The building manager sealed it until her family decided what to do with her things. But no one came. Not that week. Not the next. Sometimes I still find myself pausing at her door when I pass, listening without meaning to. But there's nothing to hear. Just the faint hum of the old radiator and the soft creak of my own floorboards. It should have been a relief. It wasn't. 3 days after she was taken, I saw a woman standing by the mailbox downstairs. Middle-aged, neat, tired in the same way grief makes people tired. She was holding a folder, flipping through papers with shaking hands. "Are you Clara's mother?" I asked. She looked up, startled. "Yes. You must be her neighbor." Her voice was polite, but there was a weight behind it. Something between shame and exhaustion. We sat together in the lobby for a few minutes. I didn't ask questions at first. I just listened. "She was always a good mother," the woman said quietly. "Loved that boy more than anything. After the accident, she couldn't accept it. The doctor said she was getting better, but..." Her voice trailed off. "What happened to him?" I asked softly. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "He fell. From the balcony. They said it was an accident, but she blamed herself. Said she turned away for 1 second. She swallowed hard. She kept his room exactly the same. Even after they moved here, she packed it up. Every toy, every drawing. As if he was coming back. I nodded, staring at the floor. I heard her talking sometimes. I thought she was arguing with someone. She was, her mother whispered. With herself. With the memory of what she lost. Before she left, she said something that stuck with me. She wasn't dangerous, you know? Just stuck. Like her mind couldn't tell the difference between remembering and living. After she left, I sat in the lobby for a long time, watching the elevator doors open and close like breath. That night, I dreamed of Clara standing on her balcony, her hair loose, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. In her arms, the toy car. She looked calm, peaceful even. Then she turned and said, "He was right there. I could see him." I woke up crying. The next morning, I called the hospital. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed to know she was still alive. The nurse told me Clara was stable, resting. They were adjusting her medication. When I hung up, I noticed something strange. The toy car, the one she'd told me to keep, was missing again. I searched everywhere. Under the bed, behind the curtains, even in the trash. Nothing. I must have misplaced it, I told myself. I'm getting old, these things happen. Still, it bothered me. That evening, I went downstairs to check the mail. When I came back up, there was a small envelope taped to my door. My name written on it in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single note. "Thank you for listening. He's quiet now." No signature. I stood there for a long time, the hallway spinning slightly around me. The next morning, 2 police officers arrived. They were polite, careful with their words. They wanted to ask a few questions about Clara. I told them what I knew. About the noise, the arguments, the nights she cried. One of them nodded slowly. "You did the right thing calling for help, ma'am. She was in bad shape when they found her." I hesitated. Was she hurt? He shook his head. No, but she hadn't been eating. Dehydrated. The place was a mess. And, he paused, exchanging a look with his partner. We found her son's things laid out on the living room floor. His clothes, his toys. Even a plate with food, like she'd set the table for him. I closed my eyes. Oh, Clara. Before they left, one of them mentioned something else. Something that kept me awake for nights afterward. The balcony, he said. She'd been sitting out there in the cold for hours before we got in, just staring over the edge. Same spot where it happened years ago. After they left, I walked to the window and looked across the courtyard at her balcony. The potted plants were still there, dry and dying. The railing rusted. The window behind it sealed shut. And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A faint handprint on the glass, small like a child's. Could have been dirt, dust, anything. But I couldn't look away. The next week, a cleaning crew came to clear out her apartment. The building manager let me inside just for a moment. He said I could take anything left behind that wasn't claimed. The air inside felt thick with memories. The smell of lavender, old books, something faintly metallic. The curtains were drawn tight, blocking out the light. I saw where she'd kept everything. Boxes labeled Eli's room. Stacks of toys, a little red blanket folded neatly on a chair. On the wall above it, a drawing. A crayon sun and 2 stick figures holding hands. Mommy and me. I stood there for a long time, running my hand over the drawing, the paper rough under my fingers. Then I heard footsteps in the hall, the cleaning crew coming back, and I turned to leave. That's when I saw it. On the kitchen counter, sitting perfectly in the center, was the toy car. I froze. I hadn't brought it there. I hadn't even had it since it disappeared from my apartment. I almost took it. My hand hovered above it for a moment, but something stopped me. It didn't belong to me anymore. Maybe it never did. When I left, I asked the manager what would happen to her now. "They'll keep her in care," he said. "Maybe one day she'll get better." I nodded, though I knew some wounds don't heal. They just quiet down enough for the world to stop noticing. That night, I sat by my window again, staring at the empty apartment across the courtyard. The lights were off, the curtains still drawn, but it wasn't the same kind of silence anymore. It was peaceful, like the building itself had exhaled after holding its breath too long. I thought about the last thing Clara said before they took her away. He liked the blue car best. Keep it safe for him. Maybe she wasn't just talking about her son. Maybe she was asking me to remember him too, to make sure someone did. I still walk past her door every morning. The lock has been changed, the number polished clean. New tenants will move in soon, and they'll never know what happened here. But I will. And every now and then when I pass that quiet hallway, I still catch myself listening. Not for the arguments or the crying, but for something softer. A mother's voice trying to make peace with the past. Because maybe that's all any of us are really doing in the end, arguing with the things we can't change until we finally learn to let them go. So tell me, if you had been in my place, would you have done the same? Would you have called for help? Or would you have stayed silent, pretending not to hear? For a while I tried not to think about her. I told myself it was better that way, that she was getting help, that the worst had passed. But silence has a way of becoming a mirror. The quieter things got, the louder my thoughts became. The first few nights after she left, I couldn't sleep. I'd wake at 3 or 4 in the morning, expecting to hear her voice through the thin walls, the low, desperate murmur that used to pull me out of bed. But there was nothing. Only the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional car passing by outside, and my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I'd sit by the window, looking across at her empty apartment. It's strange how light moves differently when there's no one to catch it. Her curtains used to glow softly in the evenings. Now they just hung there, still and colorless. I started leaving my TV on at night, just for noise. Old sitcoms mostly, canned laughter, cheerful voices. It helped for a while. Until one night I caught myself laughing at a joke, then realizing no one was laughing with me. That was when I understood why Clara had talked to herself. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's punishment. One afternoon, maybe a week later, I ran into the mailman. He asked if the lady in 3B had moved out. I told him she was away for treatment. He frowned and said, "That's a shame. She always left cookies for me at Christmas." Cookies? I didn't even know she baked. I went back upstairs and opened my kitchen cabinet. Still had a tin of shortbread left from the holidays. I opened it, ate one, and thought maybe I should have brought her some. Maybe if I'd knocked sooner, she wouldn't have been so alone with her ghosts. But then again, maybe she was beyond saving long before I ever noticed. A few days later, the building manager slipped a notice under everyone's door. Apartment 3B available for rent. Just like that. A life reduced to a line of text. The next week, a young couple came to see the place. I watched them from my window just as I'd once watched Clara. The girl was smiling, holding her partner's arm, her eyes full of plans and beginnings. I wanted to warn them, tell them what had happened, but what would I even say? A woman lost her mind here, and we all pretended not to see it until it was too late? I didn't say a word. That night I dreamt again of the toy car. This time it was rolling across my living room floor. Slow at first, then faster until it hit the wall with a soft clink. I woke up in the dark, heart pounding. I told myself it was just a dream, but when I went to the window, I could have sworn I saw a faint light flicker in Clara's old apartment. It was probably just my reflection. Probably. The next morning I made tea and sat by the window again. That's when I noticed the sound. Not voices, just a creak. A slow, rhythmic one, like someone rocking back and forth in a chair. It came from above. Mrs. Hughes, the woman upstairs, had moved out months ago. No one had taken her apartment yet. So who was up there? I went to the hallway, listened. Nothing. I went back to my tea, tried to ignore it, but it returned. Night after night. Same time. Same sound. I told myself it was the building settling, the pipes, anything to make it ordinary. But after a while, I stopped believing my own excuses. Because it wasn't the sound itself that bothered me. It was what it reminded me of, the rhythm of someone comforting themselves. The same soft sway I'd heard through the walls when Clara was trying to calm down after a fight with her imaginary voice. It was then I realized. I'd spent months observing her, pitying her, analyzing her madness. But in some quiet, creeping way, I'd started inheriting it. The isolation, the routine, the need to make sense of silence. So I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister. We hadn't spoken much since our last argument years ago, over something trivial, I don't even remember what. She sounded surprised to hear from me. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I just wanted to talk." I said. About anything. We spoke for an hour. About her garden, her grandchildren, old memories. When we hung up, I cried. Not because of sadness, but because for the first time in months, I felt like I existed outside of these walls. That same evening, I saw the building manager taking boxes out of Clara's apartment. I stopped him in the hall. What happens to her things? If no family claims them, we donate, he said. I nodded, then hesitated. Could I keep something? Just a small thing. He shrugged. Sure. Go ahead. Inside, the place smelled faintly of cleaning products and dust. But beneath that still somehow was her scent. Soap and lavender. On the table, I noticed a single framed photo the cleaners had missed. Clara and her son. He was maybe 6. Freckles, messy hair, missing front tooth. She had her arm around him, smiling in that full open way people do when they still believe the world is kind. I took the photo, set it on my kitchen counter, and every morning after that, I'd make 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for her. Sounds ridiculous, I know, but somehow it made me feel less alone. Weeks passed. The apartment was still empty. Sometimes at night I'd imagine she was back, that I could hear her moving around, closing drawers, humming softly. It didn't scare me. If anything, it felt familiar. Then one morning I got a letter. Plain envelope. No return address. Inside, a folded piece of paper. Thank you for remembering him. That's all it said. No signature. I stared at it for a long time, trying to decide if it was real. Maybe her mother sent it. Maybe the hospital let her write. Or maybe it was someone's idea of kindness, a nurse, a friend. But part of me wanted to believe it was her. That night, I placed the letter beside the photograph. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to listen for sounds through the wall. The silence didn't scare me anymore. I started baking again. Little things, muffins, cookies, bread. And sometimes, when the smell filled the apartment, I'd open my window just a crack, hoping maybe the scent drifted across the courtyard. Because if grief can travel through walls, maybe comfort can too. Still, there are moments, fleeting but sharp, when I hear it. Not her voice, but something softer. A whisper almost like memory. Keep it safe for him. And I whisper back, I will. It's strange, isn't it? How 2 people can live just a few feet apart and never truly see each other. Until one of them disappears. I used to think madness was something loud, something you could recognize right away. But now I know better. Madness can be quiet. It can bake cookies for the mailman. It can smile at you in the hallway and say good morning like everything's fine. Sometimes it can even sound like your own thoughts. And maybe that's what frightens me most. Not what happened to Clara, but how easily it could have been me. Started with little things. I walk into a room and forget why I was there. I'd misplace my glasses, my keys, my teacup. Then find them somewhere I was sure I hadn't left them. First I blamed age. We all do. Memory fades, that's normal. But then one morning I found the photo of Clara and her boy turned face down on the counter. I never touched it. Elise, I don't remember touching it. That small thing shouldn't have mattered. But it did. Because for a moment, standing there in the quiet of my kitchen, I felt the same chill I used to feel when I listened to her talk through the wall, that mix of confusion and fear, when you realize the world might not be behaving the way it should. I picked up the photo and set it upright again. There, I whispered as if to calm myself. Everything's fine. But from that day on, I started noticing other things. The rocking sound upstairs came back, same time every night around 2 a.m. And this time I could hear something faint beneath it. Not words exactly, more like a soft humming. A lullaby. I tried to ignore it. Turned up the volume on my TV, played music, anything. But the sound found its way through, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat behind the walls. I even went upstairs once, knocked on the empty apartment's door. No answer. The hall was cold, the air still. Maybe it was the pipes again. Maybe my mind was creating patterns from noise. But deep down I knew what it reminded me of. The nights Clara tried to soothe herself, her voice trembling as she whispered into the dark, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's here." The next morning I woke to the smell of something sweet. Vanilla. Faint but real. For a moment I thought it was coming from my kitchen. Maybe I'd left the oven on or spilled extract somewhere. But when I checked, everything was off. The scent was drifting from the hallway. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened my door and leaned out. No one there. Just that soft, sweet smell fading down the corridor toward 3B. It hit me like a memory, the cookies the mailman mentioned, the ones she used to bake every December. I told myself again that I was being foolish. That memory can make you smell things that aren't there. That guilt can twist your senses. But the next night I dreamt of her again. Clara sitting at her kitchen table baking, her hands covered in flour, the toy car sitting beside the mixing bowl. She looked up at me and smiled. "Do you smell it?" she said. "He loves vanilla." I woke up with my heart pounding, and for a moment I couldn't tell where I was. The next morning I decided to get out. Just go for a walk, clear my head. The air was crisp, the trees shedding the last of their leaves. I passed the little park near the end of the street, the one with the old swing set, and saw a boy playing there. Alone. He couldn't have been more than 7. Same age as Clara's son when he died. He was pushing a toy car through the dirt, making quiet engine noises. When he saw me watching, he smiled and waved. I waved back. For a split second, something inside me broke. Not sadness exactly, but something heavier. I wanted to go to him, ask his name, tell him to be careful, to hold on tight to his mother's hand when he crossed the street. But of course I didn't. You can't say those things to strangers. When I got home, the hallway outside my apartment felt colder than usual. On my doormat there was something small. A single cookie. Round. Vanilla. No note. No explanation. Just that. I stood there staring at it for a long time. I didn't pick it up. Just brushed it gently aside with my shoe and stepped inside. Locked the door behind me. All that day I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to read, but the words blurred. Tried to call my sister again, but every time the phone rang, I hung up before she answered. By nightfall I was pacing, listening, waiting for something, I didn't even know what. And then faintly I heard it again. Through the wall. The same soft hum, the same creaking rhythm. Louder this time. Closer. It was coming from the direction of 3B. I knew the apartment was empty. I knew that. But my hands were trembling anyway as I reached for my keys. The hallway was dark. The light above flickered as I walked toward her door. The number 3B had been replaced, shiny and new. But I could still see the faint outline of where the old one had been. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then a whisper. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. "Keep it safe." My breath caught. I stepped back, heart hammering. The hallway felt smaller, the air thinner. I turned and hurried back to my apartment, slammed the door, locked it twice. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the kettle to pour water for tea. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the window, eyes fixed on that dark balcony across the courtyard. The one where she used to stand, where she lost everything. The next morning I decided I needed to prove to myself that nothing was wrong, that I was imagining it all. So I went to see the building manager. He looked at me with that polite half-smile people reserve for the elderly. "No one's in that unit, Mrs. Turner. Promise. We're repainting next week." I nodded, pretending that helped. But as I turned to leave, he added almost casually, "Funny thing though, the cleaning crew keeps complaining about the smell of cookies. Must be something stuck in the vents." I laughed, but it came out wrong. Too sharp. Too quick. That night I didn't try to sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the photo, the letter, the empty teacup beside me. Around 2 a.m. I heard it again. The creak. The hum. The faintest hint of vanilla in the air. And this time, I didn't move. I didn't turn up the TV or close my ears. I just listened. Not because I believed she was there, but because in that strange aching moment I understood her. Maybe she wasn't talking to herself all those nights. Maybe she was talking to what was missing. The silence, the memory, the love that no longer answered back. And maybe that's what I'd been doing too. I whispered, barely audible, "It's okay, Clara. You can rest now." The sound stopped. Just like that. I sat there for a long time, tears rolling down my face, not sure if they were hers or mine. When the sun came up, I opened the window wide and let the air in. The scent was gone. The building was quiet again. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe it wasn't. But somehow the silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. For the first time since she left, I felt like I could breathe. It's strange how life moves on, even when your mind stays stuck in one moment. The days got warmer. The trees on the street turned green again. The young couple finally moved into 3B, cheerful, polite, full of plans. They painted the door yellow, laughed in the hallway, and yet every time I passed by, I felt that same pressure in my chest, like there was still something unfinished in the air. One morning while checking the mail, I saw a name that stopped me cold. Clara Hastings, St. Mary's Psychiatric Ward. It was printed on a small envelope, returned to sender. The address label was smudged, unreadable, but the return stamp was clear. No recipient found. The building manager must have dropped it by mistake, probably left from before her family stopped coming. But holding that envelope, I felt an ache I couldn't ignore. That afternoon I called the hospital. I don't even know what I expected. Maybe they'd tell me she'd moved, maybe that she was gone. But the nurse recognized the name. "She's still with us," she said gently. "Would you like to schedule a visit?" I almost said no. What right did I have? I wasn't family, just a neighbor who listened through the wall. But something in me, maybe guilt, maybe empathy, wouldn't let go. So I said yes. The hospital was an old brick building on the edge of town, half shaded by tall oak trees. Inside, everything smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender soap. The hallways were too bright, too clean. A nurse led me through a series of locked doors until we reached a quiet garden enclosed by glass. There, sitting on a wooden bench beneath a tree, was Clara. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with gray. She wore a pale cardigan and held a book in her lap, though she wasn't reading. Her eyes were fixed on the window reflection, maybe watching something only she could see. When she turned and saw me, she smiled. Softly, as if she'd been expecting me. "Mrs. Turner," she said, her voice calm, almost steady. "You came." I froze. "You remember me?" "Of course." She tilted her head, studying me the way she used to when she tried to guess what I was thinking through the wall. "You lived across the courtyard, always watching." I sat beside her, unsure what to say. "I wasn't watching. Not in a bad way. I just..." She nodded before I could finish. "I know. You heard us." The word hung in the air. I hesitated. "Clara, who were you talking to?" Her smile faltered, but only slightly. "To him," she said softly. "But not the way people think." I wasn't pretending he was still alive. I was remembering the sound of him. If I stopped talking, I forgot what his voice sounded like. My throat tightened. "You were keeping him alive." She nodded. "I guess I was." We sat in silence for a while. The garden was peaceful. Somewhere in the distance, a wind chime rang. "I heard they might release you soon," I said. She shrugged. "Maybe. I'm better now. I understand things differently." Then she turned to me. "You called for help, didn't you? That night." I looked down at my hands. "Yes. I know," she said, her voice quiet. "At first I hated you for it. I thought you were taking him from me all over again. But later, I realized you saved me. I wouldn't have survived much longer." Tears burned behind my eyes. "I didn't want to lose you, Clara. I just didn't know what else to do." She smiled faintly. "You did what I couldn't, you saw me." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sunlight hit the bench just right, warming my shoulder. She looked peaceful, fragile, but whole. I asked about her family. She said her mother came once, then stopped. It was too painful. She didn't blame her. "People like to remember you the way you were before the cracks showed," she said. Before I left, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A toy car. Blue. The same one she'd once given me. "I think this belongs to you," she said. I shook my head. "No, Clara. It's yours." But she pushed it into my hand anyway. "Then keep it safe. For both of us." I couldn't speak. My voice had vanished somewhere between grief and relief. When I got home, I placed the toy car beside the photo and the letter on my table. My little shrine of everything that used to haunt me. But now, instead of sadness, there was calm. I started going out more. Visiting the park, calling my sister every Sunday, baking for the new couple in 3B. The young woman reminded me of Clara, gentle, soft-spoken, always humming as she carried groceries up the stairs. Sometimes, when she waved at me from her balcony, I'd catch myself glancing toward where Clara used to stand. For a second, I'd almost expect to see her there too, smiling faintly, her eyes clear again. Weeks passed, then months. Life returned to its small routines. Until one morning I received another letter. No return address again. Inside just one line. He would have liked you. I didn't cry this time. I just smiled, because I finally understood. All those nights I'd spent listening, worrying, judging. I thought I was watching her fall apart. But maybe I was being reminded of what holds us together. The need to be heard, even when there's no one left to answer. The line between sanity and sorrow isn't as wide as people think. Sometimes it's just the difference between someone asking, "Are you okay?" and no one asking at all. That night, I sat by the window again as I used to. The building was quiet, peaceful. The yellow door across the courtyard glowed softly under the hallway light. I held the toy car in my palm, the cool metal pressing gently against my skin. And I whispered into the stillness, not to Clara, not to her son, but to whatever part of the world was still listening. "You're safe now." For the first time, the silence didn't answer back. And that was enough. I looked at the little photo at the tiny blue car beside it, and I thought of every sound I'd heard through the walls, every cry, every whisper, every echo of a woman trying not to disappear. Maybe that's what I'd been afraid of all along, disappearing quietly. So before I turned off the light, I said something out loud, something I'd never said before. "Good night, Clara." Then I looked at the camera, or rather, at the invisible eyes I knew were watching, listening, trying to make sense of everything, and I asked, "What would you have done in my place? Would you have called for help when you heard her crying every night? Or would you have stayed silent, pretending not to hear? 'Cause I still wonder, did I do the right thing?